Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mentor Mentee Podcast. I am Anjelika Surprise, and back with me here today is our CEO, Ron Helmer,
Hello, everyone.
and our COO, Samer Dammer.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be here.
Thank you both for joining me again today. Last month, we talked about building capacity by getting more from the team already in place. The pressure does not suddenly disappear in August. Schedules are still full, and that can make small problems easier to miss. Today, we are talking about what those problems cost, how strong service teams catch them earlier, and why that matters to productivity and profit. Before we get into today's episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you know when a new episode drops. Let's get into it. When leaders hear profitability, they usually think about pricing, labor rates, or expense control. Ron, what problems get missed when the conversation stops there?
I'd probably say efficiency. If something happens where it throws the technician off the axis, then that adds additional labor time. And so that can creep into additional labor hours to repair. And it's a little difficult to track.
To kind of follow suit there, it's also things that, the technician may not know. And what happens is they try to find out how to fix that specific item. For example, a technician may not know a certain step in the process, and they're going to spend time to go take a look and try to figure it out. And that's going to add into their repair time. And that's usually not counted for.
Right. That could be a small issue. People don't always think about what small issues in a service department can become expensive if they're not caught early on.
I hear a lot about comebacks. When talking to leaders in the industry, fixed ops directors, they tend to either not hear about comebacks because the customer decided to take it somewhere else. That's one, going to cost the dealership money and the trust of that customer. But number two, if they do bring that vehicle back, now they've got to service the vehicle a second time. And that's going to take more labor hours. Potentially, they're going to have to give a discount or do the job for free, and that's going to cost them money and time. So I would say comebacks is a big one I hear.
Yeah, those things can really add up.
I concur. I mean, there's a lot of little things that can happen. They're minute, but if not caught over time, they can expand and expound. It can cause a lot of problems. So it's just visibility and awareness of what's going on in your organization, trying to maintain command and control at all times, right? If you got a good shop foreman, management why walk around checking with the techs, what bottlenecks are you having, what are you seeing, anything we can do to alleviate that, what support do you need?
Yes, I agree. How do documentation or lack thereof and certification gaps cost a service department time, productivity, and revenue?
I think it was Peyton Manning that said confusion comes from when you don't know what you're doing, right? So documented processes are always helpful. They don't cover everything, but generally speaking, when somebody's ill aware of what they're supposed to do, they will start working independently outside of whatever process that there is in place. And that's usually when you create serious problems, or can create serious problems, I should say. Obviously, within the career paths, either through ASE and or the OEMs or safety training or just general LMS training, not abiding by those, following those, subscribing to those, just creates risk as far as that's concerned.
Right. If there's not like a certain process that's documented, then someone's going to do it their own way, and then they could either teach that down or everyone could be doing it a different way, and that can cause inefficiencies.
Things are not documented correctly. It can cost dealerships money, specifically with warranty work. There's a specific process that needs to be documented once that vehicle has been completed. If the documentation is incorrect or the process was not specifically followed, the dealership might lose out on the payback from the OE. As the OEM looks at the documentation and says, you didn't follow the process, we're not paying you for this warranty work. We need to make sure that the technicians know those processes and they're documenting things correctly.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So in talking with a dealership group, they had a specific OEM that has a history of engine issues within their product lines. New vehicle rolls off the lot, has an engine issue, pull it back in. did the diagnostics, come to find out it was an engine failure. So they went through the proper channels, proper process, filled out the warranty, got it approved, did an engine replacement. And then at the end of the day, they buttoned it all up, and then they went through the final process with the OEM to get the appropriate compensation. Come to find out that even though it was a brand new vehicle, they used the existing engine mounts that came with or engine mount bolts that came with the car off of the assembly line, and not the bolts provided in the warranty engine that came with it. And the OEM denied their warranty claim. So talk about dotting the I's, crossing T's, and splitting the hairs. That was probably a $14,000 to $16,000 job that the dealer had to eat.
Yeah, that's a really good example of small problem becoming big expense. For heavy duty diesel teams, I know a lot of these things are similar with their service teams as well, but what can be lost when shift handoffs are incomplete?
So with the heavy duty diesel side, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, and that was some of these shops are 24-hour operations. When the technician in the morning is working on the vehicle, they bring it into the bay, they start to disassemble, they diagnose, they figure out what's going on. If they're not documenting what is going on, when that shift change happens, the next shift doesn't know where the technician has left off. They may see discrepancies in the diagnosis, they may see discrepancies in what has already been completed, and they may have to redo that work again if it wasn't documented. It's so important to document things, especially when we're handing off work to other coworkers, just to ensure that the process is still being followed.
Yeah, if you think about it from the heavy duty diesel side, specifically the 24-hour service centers, there's a start, stop, start process, specifically with shift change.
Right.
And obviously you want to ensure that whoever's coming in on the second shift has equal practical competencies and experience. But if they've got to spend 30 to 45 minutes just to kind of figure out, okay, well, where was this job left off at? It's kind of a bad handoff. And a lot of times you don't get that personal turnover, right?
Right.
So that's one of those things that communication, visibility is key, and that comes from documentation.
Yes, 100%. Why are those costs harder for leaders to see than a traditional expense, do you think?
Well, mainly because they're not tracked. It's kind of hard to track. I mean, everybody looks at effective labor rate. Everybody knows what that is. They all know what goes into it, and they all know what kind of takes away from it, which is labor overruns on repairs, comebacks. Maybe a dealership is running specials. Maybe there's some freebies thrown in there. All of that impacts that. But to be able to really identify how much is being lost in ELR through inefficiencies, lack of documentation, those things usually raise their heads in time to repair overruns as well as comebacks. And so by then it's a little too late, right?
Right.
So it kind of comes down to command and control of what's going on in the service center and having a clear visibility and understanding of what the practical competencies of the technicians are, as well as what their known deficiencies and or lack of experience is, other than, what's relatable to their development. So if you lack a development structure within your organization, then you're kind of asking for some of these issues to rear their ugly head.
It's a compounding problem. Ron's talking about the small little minute things that may not be tracked or visible. But then let's say there's one every single day, right? And the technician may not document it. Maybe the leadership does not know. Well, then compound those over a month and then over a quarter. And then by the end of the year, you start to realize, hey, we've got a lot of small little inefficiencies that are starting to add up. So even just eliminating a small one in a single day could potentially reduce the compounding problem at the end of the year. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all going to look at the P&L statement. We're going to go, okay, where can we save more money? Where are we losing money? If we document it and track those, then the P&L statement may have a higher line.
Right. That leads me into my next question. At what point does a small inconsistency become a measurable business problem?
It really becomes a problem from day one. For example, if we're bringing on an entry-level technician, we're going to be training them and teaching them how to do things day to day. But if we have multiple people having those same problems and we're not stopping it from day one, then it's just going to compound from there. So really the focus is to track and understand things as early as possible.
Yeah, I would agree, but I also think it's going to show up in extended time to repair and in backed up ROs.
Yeah.
Right. So if you take the example you gave earlier, and you multiply that by one technician, but now you multiply by 5, you multiply by 10, you multiply by 20, multiply over a specific period of time, it's pretty substantial. It really comes down to the mindset and what is the priorities of leadership within a service center, either at the shop foreman level and or the dispatcher and or the service manager, and looking at those. And a lot of organizations do that, which is great, right?
Yes.
But trying to get ahead of it, I think we talked in the last episode about the day in the life of the service manager, a shop foreman, or, a dispatcher, which early in the morning is about, okay, how many ROs do we have? How many tickets were written? What's the workflow? What's the workload look like? And then usually from that point on, once they turn the lights on, chaos ensues. And those individuals are out there trying to keep things on the track, get things back on the track. And so at the end of the day, it all starts with what is the focus, the intentionality of leadership, but then secondarily to that, having great command and control where you can smoke those things out early in the day, not just in the morning, but in the
It all kind of comes back to having healthy accountability across the entire team, from leadership to the technicians themselves. So what does healthy accountability look like before a problem becomes expensive?
From a service manager's perspective, shop foreman, dispatcher, it's almost like their air traffic control, right? So each technician is flying their own aircraft, and they're well aware of what's going on within their aircraft to a certain degree.
Right.
But they don't know or understand what other aircrafts are inbound and what other aircrafts are outbound. And then you got to rely on the ground crews. So accountability is across the board from bottom to top and back down.
Right.
So it's just a matter of, if something gets off track, somebody has to say something. And it's not a point of accountability from a standpoint of consequence, but it's a point of accountability to, let's not make the issue or the problem any worse than it is. Let's not let it get expanded into something that's catastrophic or significant.
Yeah. It kind of goes back into something I think I heard you say the other day, that bad news doesn't get better with time.
No, it does not.
So,
No. Or anything that's considered bad news doesn't get better with time either.
yes. So I think that's great. Do you have anything to add, Sammer?
I do. You both mentioned the word accountability, but I also want to put the word expectations. If we're setting expectations early on, like Ron's point with the air traffic controller, if someone's having problems, let's not hide those problems. Let's stand up and say, hey guys, I've got this issue. Has anyone seen this? How do I get past it? I need some help. I need support. The faster a technician does that, the faster they can get back on track, get the vehicle completed, and on to the next RO. So it really comes down to not only the accountability, but ensuring that leadership sets the expectations here. Sometimes we have to lean on each other and say, hey, I'm stumped. Can someone help me? Can I get a hand over here?
Well, I would also add this, you talk about expectations. So an organization that has somewhat of a structured development program is going to have an understanding and visibility into what the capabilities are of the technicians, right?
Right.
And what happens a lot of times where leaders set up traps is they set expectations without any consideration or thought given to reality. There's an old adage, you can frustrate a goldfish by judging its ability to climb a tree. So if you set unrealistic expectations for your people, then you're setting not just them up, but you're setting your organization up for failure. So when you set those expectations, you have to set them within reach of what their reality is. Having a structured development program gives you visibility into what the reality of their practical competencies are and what they can do to a certain degree. Then you can provide the support necessary to help them reach above and beyond that expectation. The other thing I would say is that good leaders are going to create opportunities where they judge and set up opportunities for failure, right? So if you have a situation where the opportunity presents itself and you can use a specific repair order opportunity as a way to try to stretch that individual's reality relative to their competencies, and they have the wherewithal relative to what the capacity workflow expectations are to be able to reach a little bit further, fail a little bit, but learn through that failure, because that's an added rep, and that added
Right.
rep works towards their competency.
How do you think consistent reps and clear feedback help technicians improve before these mistakes become patterns?
Separation comes from preparation, right? And part of preparation, in the sense in what we're talking about, is elevating technicians to a competent level. And the way that they gain those competencies are through consistent repetitions, to the point where they can actually do it through memorization and practical experience because of the prior reps that they've done. And they also learn how to do it more efficiently. And
Yes.
that can be from the standpoint of, all right, I know I need these 4 tools to do this job. So I'm going to pull this car in, I'm going to execute this RO, and I'm going to have those 4 tools at my fingertips, so I don't have to leave the car to go to the toolbox to get them and walk back. That's added time to repair, right?
Right.
So those reps and the consistency in those reps is obviously going to be beneficial, not just for that technician, but for that service center.
Yeah, it goes right into how small problems, not necessarily a problem, but how small inconsistencies can become expensive when compounded. How does visibility into skill progression help leaders step in earlier or assign work more confidently?
Manager can see where the technician may be struggling. They can start to assign them with their mentor to focus on that specific task. Thinking about that problem that Ron brought up earlier with the engine and getting everything replaced. Had the technician done a few more engine replacements and potentially use the right bolts that came with the new engine, then that's an additional step that would have been eliminated. It would have reduced the cost on the dealership because they had to eat the cost of the motor. But visibility in that technician and knowing that they can do that job correctly the first time without a potential comeback, everything's documented, increases the confidence of not only the technician, but the leadership team, the service advisor, the dispatcher, everyone that's involved. It's really cool when you have a dispatcher that goes, "Oh yeah, we got an engine replacement today. I'm going to go ahead and assign it to Sam over here because he's done 15 of them over the past month. He knows what he's doing. I know he's going to get this thing done, knocked out, move on to the next RO." And that's where the confidence is going to come from.
I would also say that great organizations, if they're smart and they're trying to leverage any competitive advantage that they can get relative to how they set their teams up for success, how they best service the customer, they should be having scheduled sessions, and you can group them together based on skill level, and then maybe have 1 or 2 senior folks in there, but kind of just walk through, all right, what were some of the things you saw yesterday that created any kind of issues, problems, or challenges, right?
Yeah, quick
And
check-in.
that's where you can get conversation and collaboration between the tech bench itself to offer ideas and solutions. So the next time they're faced with a similar problem, one, there's a lessons learned element, and then there's also ideas and suggestions for how to do it differently the next time so it doesn't repeat itself.
Yep, great communication creates more engagement amongst the team and more efficiencies. How does the capacity pressure we discussed in July make these issues easier to miss in August?
Anytime you get so busy to the point where you can't see the trees through the forest, the squeakiest wheel gets the attention. And I think that is a normal scenario everybody works through.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you can create greater inefficiencies by not paying attention to the detail, right? And so that can be problematic in of itself.
Yeah, with increased pressure, that's where shortcuts happen. That's where steps are skipped. And that's when small little details start to add up. Everything's extremely busy. But for example, July and August, right? There's a lot of vehicles getting their air conditioning units serviced right now. When a bunch of those vehicles are coming in and then all of a sudden a vehicle shows up on a flatbed needing an engine repair, now we've got to diagnose what's going on with the engine. We got to get back to the OE. Does this fit the engine replacement program, or is this going to be taking the heads off the motor? Meanwhile, we've got 20 vehicles over here with AC units that are supposed to be picked up by the afternoon. And that's where steps are going to be skipped because people start dropping other projects to focus on the more important ones, quote unquote, more important. And that's where things starts to slip.
Where do you see profit being quietly lost in a service department, even when the top line numbers look fine? Is there anything else that leaders really aren't thinking about or aren't tracking or measuring that could be affecting those top line numbers?
I was talking to a dealer group a couple months ago, and we asked them the question, do you guys measure your comebacks? Are you guys counting them? Do you know what vehicles are comebacks, which ones are not? And they said, oh yeah, we track all of the comebacks, but their profit was going down. They have less customers returning. When a customer has their vehicle in a service center for more than what was estimated and it has not been repaired, they go to a different dealership or a different service center or an independent. And that vehicle, even though the repair might get completed at the second location, the first location is not going to count that as a comeback. They thought that that vehicle was repaired and off on the road the first time. So when people say we're counting comebacks, yes, we count comebacks, but the comebacks that are coming back to our specific locations, yes. But we're not accounting for the comebacks that go to a different location. That is trust. That is trust with the customer that could have come back and spent more money at a different time had the repair been done correctly the first time. And so comebacks are something that people say they track, but I think there's a kind of an unknown number that is lost because you can't necessarily track every comeback. Sometimes they don't come back to you.
I think it boils down to time to repair. So if you're looking at specific technicians' time to repair on RO jobs, it could be one of three things, right? Was it something that didn't get done correctly in diagnostics? Is it a competency issue? And or is it just an efficiency issue? Like the example I gave earlier, I know if I've got an RO that says this is the job and I know I need 4 tools, if I've got those 4 tools handy dandy with me and I don't have to take 5 steps to the toolbox and 5 steps back, I minimize my time to repair. So anybody in leadership, shop foreman, dispatchers, service manager, if they're looking at those and they're seeing that they got one technician that's pretty much Johnny on the spot when it comes to time to repair and is very consistent with that, then you know what you have. But if you have another technician that seems to be 10 to 15 minute overrun all the time on their repairs, then that requires a little bit more further investigative work. Be curious with the technician and ask, okay, well, how are you doing this? What's going on? What are you seeing? And trying to help that individual shave off those additional minutes per RO. If you can do that, that's obviously going to increase capacity. It's going to improve your ELR. And then it just comes back to quality to minimize opportunities for comebacks. But I think at the end of the day, time to repair would be the primary measurable that I would look at to give me insight in how an individual technician is doing or isn't doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. On the other side, what actually helps a service department generate more profit without simply adding more people or raising prices?
There's obviously a lot of metrics that service centers look at.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of depends upon, like what we talked about earlier, expectations have to be grounded in reality.
Right.
And depending upon where a service center is relative to some of those metrics that they're monitoring, really sitting down and kind of getting into them and doing some analysis to say, okay, what do we think the root cause scenario is here? Right.
Right.
And the first thing, and obviously in, the context in which we're talking about, we have to rely heavily on people to perform the work. And so how the work gets performed is relative to how well trained and competent the individuals are, as well as how well they're bought into the culture, environment, and the service center itself, which comes down to leadership. So there's a lot of things one can look at. If you want to turn the corner or if you want to adjust a projection of what your service center is doing by an inch or by 2 inches, then it starts at some baseline in the beginning, and then you just have to track it and measure it. And then you have to make those adjustments as you go along to ensure that you're getting the measurables you want through the effectiveness of the changes that you're making.
I would also add how quickly a technician can essentially upskill, move across their pathway. If there's a lot of jobs that are coming in that are requiring a lot of diagnostics work, how many master technicians have the full diagnostic certifications to do all of that work? That's where things start to begin to pile up when vehicles are first coming in. But then once those vehicles have been diagnosed and they get passed into the main shop, then it's understanding, hey, do we have enough technicians that are competent enough to work on this specific diagnosis? If not, then the quicker we can move those technicians to that skill level, the quicker we can then focus and knock out those repair orders. That's honestly where I think the majority of the money that may be missed by dealerships is escaping from. It's skill gaps.
Mhm.
Yeah, but also you got to think of it too from this perspective. A service center is like an orchestra, right? And the
Mhm.
service manager, shop foreman, dispatcher, they're kind of acting like the maestro, and everything can go out without a hitch. But if first and second chair violin is off, then you don't get the sound you're looking for, right?
Right.
So the challenge is for those guys is, again, knowing and understanding what are the strengths and the depth of their bench. And if they understand that, then they can make the necessary adjustments day over day, hour over hour. But then they can start talking about, all right, how do we institute real effective change long term to change this from a weakness to a strength, right? And so I think we have to give credence to the challenges, the objectives, and the needs of leadership within the service center to understand it's not just a silver bullet. They all have to work in concert with each other. And if they don't, then it's going to sound really funny. It's going to get a really weird byproduct from it.
Right. I'll have to be on the same page. What would you say to a leader who says, our numbers look fine right now, so there's nothing to fix?
There's always something to fix. Right? When you inject people into any kind of process, there's always going to be opportunities for, efficiencies across the board, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you don't know who's going to get sick and who's going to get called out and how that impacts or affects your capacity for that day, specifically with the ROs that have been written and the walk-in traffic that comes in. And it doesn't matter if it's customer pay, warranty work, quick tech, but how do you plan to prepare for all of those variables that at some point in time will be present within your organization? And so I would just say that's great if they have that feeling, but I may ask a question that would try to validate their positional statement and just say, hey, if your door rate is 190, but your effective labor rate's 150, there's a $40 per hour opportunity there. And
Mhm.
if you could squeeze another $5 per hour and put that back in your effective labor rate, what does that mean for your organization?
Right. And we've seen this with clients of ours.
Mhm.
If you guys can speak to me a little bit about some of those numbers that we've seen with, more efficient techs, getting them up to speed, ramp up time, cutting that
Yeah.
down a bit.
Well, I think one in particular, which has been a longstanding client of ours that have expanded this into multiple rooftops within their dealership group, they've seen a 28% uplift in labor sales.
Right.
And they were probably as squared away as most organizations out there.
Mhm.
And prior to the adoption of the platform of which we offer, that's obviously geared around a structured development program to accelerate ramp up time for technicians from quick tech to C to B to A,
Mhm.
they found those efficiencies. And those efficiencies have led to increased absorption rate, which takes into consideration when you have cycles within the automotive industry relative to heavy inventory and tight margins with new and used, and fixed ops is being asked to carry more of the weight.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yep, we're seeing that right now.
Right. Ron, you went right where I was going to go. When someone says, no, our ELR is out of the roof, we're keeping 100% of the door rate. I challenge that. No one's got 100% of the door rate. I wish that was the case, but it's just not true. The customer that Anjelika's talking about, that's exactly 100% right. When they started focusing on their technician development, one, their labor sales did go up. Their ELR started to increase. But the biggest thing for them was they are no longer in a technician shortage. In fact, they are having trouble trying to find out where to put technicians because so many of them are developing and keeping those efficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the goal for a structured development program. So yes, there's always room for improvement, even if it's putting the parts department closer to the actual bays so they can get parts to the technicians quicker. That just helps with the time on ROs.
Yep, goes back to what Ron said a few episodes back, where people are an organization's greatest asset. So investing in them obviously alludes to better business outcomes. What is one practical step a service team can take this month to catch problems earlier?
I would say it would start with communication, right? Create opportunities for discussion within your teams.
Yeah.
Be able to get that shared information back up through the ranks from the tech bench, and then create that dialogue between technicians, both junior and senior, as well as mid-level. And you can cause and affect change there to the point where that will start to take root and it'll start to happen naturally until you have the time and the wherewithal to be able to do those other things that are much more permanent, that you can train on, that you can start to leverage as the standard within your environment.
Yeah, that's great. Communication is so important. Well, this feels like a great place to wrap up. Strong service teams do not wait for small problems to become expensive. They use clear expectations, consistent reps, accountability, and better visibility to catch them early on. That protects productivity, reduces the issues draining profit, and strengthens the work generating it. Ron, Sammer, thank you both again for joining me, and thank you to everyone watching or listening. We will see you next time.
Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.